Switching over now.
Oh, what are we on, tape delay? What is that?
There you go.
Oh my God. All right. So how many live people do we have in here?
2.
Welcome to the 4th episode of the Justin Spaulding Show. I'm your host, Justin Spaulding. We've had technical difficulties today, running late, got a big closing on Tuesday, so things are kind of hectic around here and a lot of things going on at the properties that we already have. So I had meetings about that and phone calls about that all day. I'm still getting signature pages in and scanned in for the deal. So I pushed everything back a little bit, or I didn't, not intentionally. And then we having technical problems. The internet not working. Riders having issues today too with the technology. So episode 4, we do have questions. We were supposed to have a guest, but the guest, we decided to wait until Wednesday night because he's actually a school teacher, so he didn't want to be on like a live show, and we were having technical difficulties, but he didn't want to be on a live show. I think when he was supposed to be at school was part of it. So we're gonna do it Wednesday night, 6:30 live with a guest next week. So that'll be Justin Spaulding Show episode 5, right?
Yep.
Justin Spaulding Show number 5. But this is Justin Spaulding Show episode 4. And if you don't know who I am, thank you so much for joining us. Business, real estate, entrepreneur. We own, on Tuesday, it'll be 700 units, apartment units in South Central, Southeastern Wisconsin. I own a painting company. I initially got started in sales, and I basically took all my savings and started dumping into real estate. So you can find out more about my story by just starting to follow along. You can find me on Instagram. And then obviously all of you guys who are been following for a long time, thank you for joining again. I have fun doing this. I know, I feel like we get like 4 or 5 or 8 to 10 people that'll watch live, which I feel like half them is my family. So it kind of cracks me up, but I think we've got like 600 to 700 views on the playback. So we're getting there. I know people have enjoyed it, people getting some value out of it, and I'm kind of having fun doing it. So we're just going to keep doing it and see what happens. And hopefully you guys can share this with other people. Hopefully you'll subscribe. Leading up, if you haven't joined us before, leading up to the shows, we're always posting in different social media sites asking to take your questions. So any questions you have revolving around money, life, business, real estate, entrepreneurship, sports. We get some sports questions every now and then, just whatever. We're looking to have some conversation, and we'll keep having guests as we kind of go forward here. So, and I'm streaming live too on Instagram right now, streaming live on YouTube. If you're just listening to this, thanks for listening as well. But subscribe, keep following us. Let's get into the first question. It's a financing question. So Ed Moran. Ed's been following me for a while. Ed, thank you so much for following me. I see your name pop up pretty frequently. And Ed's question, and I read the questions out loud. So if you're watching, I know that you can see the questions, but if you're just listening, I read the questions out loud. So the people that are just listening, whether live or on replay, can understand what we're talking about. His question, 2-part question. Gotta love the 2-for-1 people. I love it. I'm a 2-for-1 guy. I like getting 2-for-1 deals. So Ed's going for the 2-for-1 deal today. Number 1, financing options I have used. And then number 2 is, so he's asking me what financing options I have used. And then number 2, due diligence best practices. Will the show be on demand after YouTube? Yep, Ed, the show will be on demand on YouTube after it is live on YouTube. So going to number 1, financing options that I have used. We've used seller financing. We've used regular, recourse bank financing. And we've used, Fannie, Freddie, May, CMBS loan that is non-recourse financing. So a little bit of difference in the financing options, right? We've also used adjustable rate financing or a floating rate financing, which we're actually going to do for the first time coming up here in the deal that we close on Tuesday. So I'll talk a little bit about each of those. Number 1, the bank financing, that's your more traditional type financing. It's a financing you think of when you're going to go get a, Ryder's looking at 4 units and a 7 unit, right? In Rockford, right? Yeah. So Ryder's been looking at stuff, and, the stuff that I started out with was more traditional, just bank financing. So it'll be amortization over 25 to 30 years, meaning the loan gets paid back over 25 to 30 years. It'll be like a 5-year term. So you'll get the loan. the loan will be good for 5 years on a payback schedule of 25 to 30 years, right? So you're amortizing it over 25 to 30 years, but the loan is only good for a 5 year term. So that means after the 5 years, you got to refinance or go to another bank or stay with the same bank, whatever. But you're gonna have to find another loan because at the end of the 5 years, typically there's a balloon payment. So we've used that there. Typically when you work with a bank, it's a recourse loan, so you're gonna have to sign on the line as far as like a guarantor. You have to be a guarantor, and it's a recourse, so you're personally liable for the loan if anything goes wrong, right? Which could obviously sink you, and there's risks there. So you want to make sure when you're doing this thing, you're doing it right. That's one option, and those can be pretty competitive interest rates. Right now they're, depending on experience and all that stuff, they're probably between 3 and 4%. We're getting bank rates right now that are at 3%, 3.2%. Then when you're looking at Fannie and Freddie type debt, that is more, it's non-recourse, right? So you're still a guarantor. You still got to sign a guarantee, but the guarantee, and you're only personally guaranteeing it if you break the rules, and they're called the bad boy carve-outs. So if the deal were just to crash and burn, we'd just be out our initial investment. They're not going to come after us for the rest of the loan. They're going to take over the property. They're going to sell the property, whatever, right? As the lender, that's what they would do. They're not going to come after us unless we break the rules, which is, one of those rules is fraud. So if we lie on our financial statements that we send them, or, during the due diligence process, whatever, that can turn the loan and make it into recourse. There's a couple other, bad boy carve outs there. But not necessarily worth getting into for this question. But it's a great option because, you can go get a $9 million, $10 million, $20 million loan, and it's non-recourse, right? So if it does fail, you're out the capital that you put in. They're not going to come after you like the regular bank debt. They're going to come after you for the rest of that. You got a personal guarantee. You're probably going to have to file bankruptcy if you lose it. The deal with Fannie and Freddie, typically, you'll see a 7-year or a 10-year, sometimes a 12-year term. It'll be amortized over 25 or 30 years. A lot of times it's 30 years. You can get interest only with that, which is very rare with a regular bank financing. So if Ryder goes out, and just like I did for my first deals, I use Ryder because he's at the point right now where I was 9 years ago. And he's going out looking at deals, trying to find someone to finance them, a bank to finance them. And same thing with me. I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, the difference between Fannie and Freddie. I don't know, whatever. So Fannie, Freddie, non-recourse, you're gonna have interest only. That's what I was getting at. The banks won't have. It's very unlikely for them to do interest only. Some scenarios they will, but with Fannie, Freddie, or a CMBS loan, you'll be able to get whether it's 2 years interest only on the loan, meaning you're not having to pay principal back, right? So there's more cash flow available to fix up the property or to distribute out. The property that we closed on in November of 2019. Yes, November 2019, the 199 unit. That was actually 10-year term, amortized over 30 years. And that whole 10-year term, the 10 years of financing, all of it's interest-free. So we're not paying back principal at all. But there we were able to do that because between myself, I was able to sell the plan that we have, and the lender also bought it, which these are smart people that we're dealing with here. They know their stuff. That we're really buying it at a low enough basis to justify the 10 years of interest only. That 10-year interest only loan, I think we were like 20, we had to put down, 28%, I think. So we also had to put down a little bit more than 25% to get that 10 years of interest only. So there's some differences there. With Fannie and Freddie, they're also going to make you, or the CMBS loans, they're also going to make you escrow your taxes with them every month, your insurance with them every month. They're going to have mandatory reserves that you're going to have to set aside every single month with them to take care of future things with the properties. So there's more, because it's non-recourse with Fannie and Freddie, there are more like restrictions with stuff like that. There's more compliance that you need to roll with, as opposed to your regular regional bank. They're going to give you that loan and they're going to let you roll with it essentially. You don't have a lot of those clauses that you do in the Fannie Freddie. The CMBS, Fannie Freddie, seller financing. So we've used seller financing before, and typically seller financing will be just a portion. It's not going to be the entire debt chunk. So you'll use a bank, and then like the seller, they might be able to finance part of your down payment. So what we did with one of the 4 units that bought back in 2013, 2014, one of the two, we Ended up, it was a $180,000 purchase. We were supposed to put down 20%, but we actually only had to put down, his owners only had to put down 5%. The seller put in 15%, and then the bank did the rest. So that 15% that the seller put in, it's called seller financing, right? And so we basically paid the seller over the next 5-6 years, something like that, the rest of that seller financing. And so that's always an option. We also use the seller financing when we did the storage unit deal, right? Seller financing, it's not always going to happen. The seller has to be in the right position to be able to do seller financing. They have to basically have, enough equity in the project already to want to do, or to be enticed to even do seller financing, which, the storage unit deal we bought for $1.2 million, and that seller, he only had like $300,000 of debt on it. So he was fine holding, it was like 15% or something like that as well. Because he was still going to get a big payout chunk. And he's like, whatever, I'll hold this. And no one else was coming by to buy it from him. So he's like, this is my only option. This is what I'll do. And it worked out for him. I mean, he got paid interest, and we ended up paying him off, I think, in like 2 years, when we refinanced to buy the other property. So it worked out. So those are the financing options that we've used. And once again, when you're talking about interest rate's going to be, it just kind of depends, right? I mean, the bank, the more risky it is for the bank, they're going to charge you more interest. So if it's your first project, like Ryder, like if it's his first project, he goes out and gets these 4-unit or 7-unit, he'll probably be charged a higher interest than I would from my bank, right? And probably by whether it's 100 basis points or 50 basis points or 150 basis points, I don't know. But the more experience you have, the more of a track record you have, the more of a relationship you have with the lender, the better terms that you'll typically start to get. The other type of financing, which this is going to be our first time using floating rate. So the deal that we're closing next Tuesday, we're using a floating rate financing. So basically every single month, the rate adjusts. And the reason that I wanted to do that is because I just wanted to have, I wanted to start transitioning our portfolio over to have different options, because we have long-term debt, we have some medium range debt. And I think it's going to be good to have some short range debt, especially on some things that could be flipped in 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. If we were to sell the Waukesha property, which we bought, that's the property I talked about earlier with the CMBS loan, that's a 10-year term. That means if we sell before year 10, we're going to have big prepayment penalties. It's called defeasance. You're going to have to make up basically the money, the interest, and the money that they missed out on for the rest of your payments ahead of time. So if we sell in year 6, we're still going to have to pay them interest. Essentially, what we're going to have to do is essentially pay them interest all the way through year 10, which that's going to be massive, right? So we don't necessarily want to do that. With this floating rate, we'll be able to sell at any time, and we'll have, a 0 to a 1% prepayment penalty is all. So it just gives us more options, and that's why we're looking at doing it. And the rest of the terms just made sense for us to do it. We could refinance it again in another 2 years when the interest only is up, and lock in more of a fixed rate and get another 2 to 4 years of interest only. It just gives us a lot more options, and so that's why I wanted to go that route. It made sense for this deal. I can just talk about some of this stuff forever. So I never want to always do things the same, and I never only want to look at one thing when I'm doing deals. I want to be able to look at the entire picture, and when you looked at the entire picture for this deal, it made sense to go this route. So that's that. Ed also asked about due diligence practices, best practices. You're going to have your environmentals, you're going to have your surveys, you're going to have your, I know a lot of people that don't go through all the units. We go through as many units as we can of the deal, whether it's 199 units, 300 units, 40 units. This deal that we're closing on Tuesday, we went through ballpark 75 to 85% of the units. So that we at least got to get in to kind of know what we're walking into. Because what I've found, even when we do that, we still run into unanticipated things that we have to take care of, whether it's plumbing issues or, water heater issues, whatever it might be. There's still issues, but we like to try to eliminate a lot of the issues. If we go through, 80, 90, 100% of the units, and it's way off of what we thought it was or what the seller represented, well, then now we can either renegotiate the deal, or we know that we got to bring more money to the table to be able to fix these things, right? So we just don't want, we want to try to limit as many surprises as possible in the due diligence phase. So then the other thing that we do is our controller Ava did for this deal, she did all the lease audits. So we go through and we just make sure that the rent rolls and the rent roll has the right amount of rent and security deposit and the lease information as far as like when the lease started, when the lease ends, and make sure that those match the actual leases. When you're buying a property, you want to make sure your leases are I guess you don't want a surprise, right? I've bought deals that are just month-to-month leases. Fine, I knew about it, right? But it would suck if you went into a deal thinking everything was a year-long lease and that you were planning planning for everything to be on a year-long lease, and all of a sudden you find out, oh crap, we got everything on a month-to-month deal here. So that's why you do your lease audits. You find out all those things, but also doing the lease audits, that's where you find out where your opportunity lies as well. So and you can confirm that there is that opportunity. So, Ryder, does that make sense?
Yeah.
That was a lot, right? Was that overwhelming?
That was good, though. No. That's good.
I feel overwhelmed when I'm talking this fast sometimes. And maybe it's just because we have so much going on right now. I don't know. Ready to watch Green Bay win on Saturday? ? Final score prediction? ? Mine is 28-17 Green Bay. So obviously I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. This is Grant Stewart that asked this question, and Grant's good at predicting stuff. I'll never forget in like 5th grade. Any of you guys that are hardcore Packer fans or Ohio State fans know the name Nile Diggs? Grant Stewart predicted that the Packers were going to draft Nile Diggs, and they drafted Nile Diggs, and he played for the Packers for like 5-6 years or whatever. So Grant's probably right on his prediction. I'm going 35-14 is what I'm going.
Rams winning?
No, Packers winning. This Devontae Adams Jalen Ramsey matchup that everyone's talking about, I think Devontae is going to take it to him. I do.
Probably.
And Ryder's a Bear fan, so he's like disagreeing with me and shaking his head right now.
I don't disagree. I just
35-14 Packers. And then let's see. So then we'll play the winner of the Saints Buccaneers. We're going to play the Buccaneers because I think the Saints beat the Buccaneers twice, right? In the regular season. I'm pretty sure. I'm 99% sure.
Yeah.
We don't always talk facts around here. We're kind of like CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, so we just kind of fly by the seat of our pants too. But pretty sure Drew Brees. You want to Google that quick?
Yeah.
Pretty sure Drew Brees beat Tom Brady twice this year. Anyone on Instagram know? So I think Tom Brady and the Bucs are going to come to Lambeau for the NFC Championship game, which would be a week from Sunday, I believe. Week from this Sunday. Yeah, so the Saints won both times. So Drew Brees is not going to beat Tom Brady 3 times in one season. That has never happened before. There's no way that's ever happened before.
Right.
Not going to start now. All right, next question. We got 10 live viewers on Instagram.
That's 7 now.
7 over there?
Yeah.
Stepping up to big leagues. Advice for property loan approval. And in parentheses, it said have good credit, of course. So they're looking for something beyond just having good credit. Advice for property loan approval. I mean, my biggest thing, obviously I just talked about financing, and the deal has to be right for the financing, right? For you to even get the loan approved. Now, I guess this is a good place to build on, because now what you also need to do to really get the bank or the lender on board with you is to have a good plan too, right? I mean, you want to separate yourself. Number one, people just going to banks. I don't know, 50% of the people probably go to a bank and they just roll in and say, hey, here's the deal. They don't have an actual plan, right? When you go the Fannie Freddie route that I talked about before, you got to have a plan because they make you have a plan. It's pretty detailed, and it can be overwhelming. It's a lot. But if you're just starting and you're going to be using a bank anyways, because no one that's just starting, that if you're buying an 8-unit, you won't be using Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae most likely. So if you're using a bank, you put a business plan together. It can be 1 page, 2 page, 3 pages long, but hey, this is the income it's going to have over the first, each, and have it broken down by year, right? Year 1, this is the revenue. Year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. If you have those revenues going up, will then have an explanation of what your plan is to get those revenues going up. What justifies it? Like anyone could just pull it out of their butt and like write down a higher number. So you want to have a plan, because just having a plan and having something on paper is going to separate you from whether it's 50 to 75 to 90% of the people that go through there. So have a plan. Same thing with the expenses, take a look at the financials. And Ryder asked me something the other day when he was in here. How'd you know? Because on one of my deals that I first bought, I bought it and there was a dumpster that was there. We paid like $200 a month for the dumpster, something like that, $300 a month for the dumpster. And what I ended up finding out when I read the local municipal tax code or whatever, the real estate tax, what was included in my real estate taxes, I found out that trash removal was actually included in my property taxes I was paying. I just had to pick up the phone and call to get my the bins delivered. Can't even think of the word bins around here. I had to call to get my bins delivered, and then the tenants, they would fill their bins. They each had their own bin. They would take it out to the curb. I got rid of the dumpster, which is $200-ish, $300 a month. It was $2,400 to $3,600 a year. When you're talking 8 units, that's a big cost savings. So to be able to include that in your business plan, to find out like where can you save money and how, but then also if you can go above and just have more than numbers, but just even if it's a sentence, 2-sentence description on how you're doing each of these things, the bank is a business partner of yours. That's how you got to view it. So you got to tell them, you got to show them as a business partner how and why they should be investing with you. Right? So separate yourself, be detailed, have a business plan. I know that really helped me, especially early on, and it helps me now. But also, not only does it help me get the bank, like get the loan, it also just helps me realize, oh, okay, this is like a for sure thing. This is a for sure deal, and it helps me get rid of a lot of anxiety. Right now, I have zero anxiety wiring $10.2 million next week to do this deal. I don't have, because we've done all of our homework on it, right? So, and we've got a plan in place. We know what we're going to be doing. So that's my advice on that.
I'm good.
Figured it would. All right. Next question is advice building relationships with banks. So these questions are kind of building on top of each other. I'm going to try to not be repetitive. So then the advice building relationships with banks. Did you do this on purpose?
No, I did not. No.
You should have just taken credit for that, because I would have been like, "Wow, that's impressive." So advice building relationships with banks. So on top of everything I just kind of said there, now once you do one deal with a bank, and they see that you're a success, they're gonna want to do more deals. Like they can't write you checks big enough and often enough to go out and do deals, because banks get paid. What you guys don't realize is, banks want you to save money so that they can go out and lend more, right? They want to lend money. That's how they make money. And so advice building relationships with banks, like when you start to perform, you're going to get, number one, you never just want to corner yourself with one bank, right? You always want to have options. So like when I'm doing things, most projects, not all the time anymore because of these relationships. I just kicked the camera. Because of these relationships. So not every time am I shopping, because I don't want to be the guy that shops every single time if I'm getting treated well, fairly. But you want to be able to keep a bank honest too, right? So if you do a first good deal with a bank where they're excited to do a second deal with you, my advice is that second and third and fourth deal, you really include them and say, hey guys, look, I want to go with you guys and continue to build this relationship, but I'm going to get other quotes too. And just be honest with them. I'm going to get other quotes too. This is with 2 or 3 other banks right now looking at it. But you guys are going to be my first choice as long as you guys can be competitive. You got to be competitive, because I'm going to go with what makes the most financial sense for this deal, right? And so when you start to do that and have that conversation with them, and then you get to a point where, you might be able to go right to them. I've gone to them after I've done 2 or 3 deals with a bank. I've gone to them at that point, hey, this is yours if you can give me this exact rate right now. And I know it's competitive, but it might not be the absolute best rate, because I might be in a scenario where I need to save time to close the deal with the seller, right? I need to wrap the deal up quicker. Those relationships help. So I just think being able to stay in contact with the banks, shoot them. There's some banks that will require you to send financials like yearly. If it's your first or second project, send them like quarterly to the banker to show them that you're excited, to show them the progress already. To be in his ear, they'll keep thinking about you, right? They'll want to do more business with you. So that's something. Banks will eventually start to invite you to certain things, whether it's sporting events or whatever. Show up, because number one, it helps you build that relationship with the banker, which is good for you and them. But also, like, you never know who you're gonna meet there as well for networking, right? I don't know. I don't know if I have anything more than that, really. That's some of my advice is just keep in communication with them. I guess more of this is banks. It's funny, when you don't necessarily need money is when people are willing to lend you. When you need money, that's when it's very hard to get money and get a loan. And so sometimes people are like, I think actually my wife asked me, she's like, well, if we don't need it, why don't we just wait and not get that loan out? Because I actually take loans against my credit cards. So like anytime I have a big deal where I'm going to put in money, I then also go get as much cash out as I can personally from personal lines of credit to have. I'll pay interest on it, right? To just have the cash. I don't need it right now, but I have a lot of cash going into the deal. So I still want to keep some cash on the sideline, keep it flexible. I can always pay the loan back, if I want to right away. But I just do it so that I have it, because I know that if I waited on those credit card loans, and maybe if I needed it 4 months from now, if I needed it 7 months from now, and when I say need it, I don't need it to buy shoes or buy a car or get myself out of a jam. I need it to make another investment. I need it to grow my business. It might be harder for me to get. So anytime that I can get access to more cash, I do it. Same thing with the banks, lines of credit and all that stuff. So that's just more of relationships and building those relationships with banks, and just what your mindset should be. Because you got to realize too, they're a business. Banks make crazy money. You know what, Ryder? So the next deal that I'm doing is broken into separate parts, and there's bank debt on part of it. So I'm working with a regional bank here, right? Did you guys know that all the expenses they have in this deal, so when the banks draft loan docs, right, they have attorney do that on bigger deals. Okay. So it's not just a standard thing. They have attorneys do that, whether it costs them $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. It really doesn't cost anything, because you know who pays for that? I do. Banks are like, it's insane how much money banks make. They have like zero money into the thing, and they're gonna have the huge down payment. They get their loan fees. They then get the interest on the loan, right? They don't even have to pay. They don't have expenses to even operate to get, like, it's insane. They cheat the system. So
when do you start a bank?
I mean, yeah, I don't know all those steps, but it'd be cool. I own in 2 states, one landlord, unfriendly. All right, so some of these people just shorthand their questions. So for those of you just listening, I'll try to elongate the question so it makes sense if you're not just looking at it. This guy says, I own in 2 states. One of those states is landlord unfriendly. Do I sell and invest in another state? I am not in distress. So it means his properties must be performing well. He owns in 2 separate states. One of those states is landlord unfriendly. Do I sell and invest in another state? I mean, if you're not in distress or don't have a reason to sell, you don't have to sell. I mean, I own properties. I own 2 properties in probably the most tenant common counties in the country, in Dane County. Dane County is one of the most tenant, and it's up there with like New York City and some stuff that goes on in California. So no, I don't think that just because you own one property in a state that's unfriendly to landlords, I don't think that necessarily automatically makes you sell. Now, if you're in a position in that deal to make good money and then move on to the next deal and perhaps move your money out of that state, do you do it? Yeah, why not, right? But I don't think right now that if your deal's doing well, it's cash flowing and you don't have, it's not like you're in over your head on debt. If things turn backwards for 2 years, you'd still be able to make it through the other side and you're sitting pretty. I don't see that solely justifies you selling that property. That's just my opinion. But if you've had that property for 2, 3, 4, 5 years and you've already added a lot of value where you've got a lot of equity you could unlock there, I would look at selling that. I'm looking at doing that with a couple of our deals right now. Deals that we've built some equity in. Well, actually we bought and we already had a lot of equity just because of the way we bought them. Then we improved them a little bit more, put some money into them. Rents have gone up. We've been able to prove basically we've been able to prove the business plan. I'm looking at just selling because I want to unlock that equity and go rinse and repeat that. I want to buy something at the floor and take it to the ceiling, right? And when I take it towards the ceiling, I want to sell it because I built equity, because between the floor and the ceiling is equity. I want to sell it, unlock that equity. Now go buy another deal at the floor that's hopefully that deal is a little bit bigger, has a little bit more upside, whatever. Put that money to work again, take it from the floor towards the ceiling, and at some point in there, sell again and rinse and repeat, right? Now, at some point, you get enough assets under management where it just makes sense to not necessarily sell everything and sit on things longer term. But when you're just starting out, this is my advice to Ryder. Like if he's gonna go buy a 4-unit, my advice to him is be in that 4-unit for as little time as possible. Meaning if you can get in, add your value, and if you can double your equity in 2 years, get out, sell it, double your equity, triple your equity, whatever, go out, rinse and repeat. But now rinse and repeat with a 12-unit. Do that same thing with a 12-unit. Do that same thing with then do that same thing with a 30-unit. Right? And keep going from there. John Hurley. Oh, my dad asked a question. How do you think Urban Meyer will do as the NFL head coach? I think he's going to crush it. I kind of like Urban Meyer. Jacksonville's due to be a winner too. But I mean, they were winning a couple years ago, right? They went to the AFC Championship game or something. Yeah. But I think Urban Meyer's going to crush it. I think year 1 he's gonna go 8-8. Year 2 he's gonna go 10-6. I'm always so positive too. Unless it's the Bears. Unless we're talking the Bears, I'm gonna be negative. And then Urban Meyer's gonna go 13-3 in his third year, 13-3. John Hurley asks, you talked about where you live as not being an investment due to the lack of revenue. Is it safe to say no matter what, you'll probably have one location that won't generate revenue where you live? Absolutely. Wherever you live is a waste. Like we're wasteful, fat pigs as people, right? Like we just take up space, right? When you just look at me as a person, like I'm just taking up space, taking up air, contaminating air right now, spitting all over the place, right? When I'm talking, so I'm talking fast. Wherever you live, like it's a waste essentially. When you're talking about actual we're inefficient. We're inefficient people. We're inefficient organisms. We're not like us as people. We take up space and the space is wasteful. And then we got to buy things that we don't need. And then we got to, do things that we don't mean to do. I mean, when I lived with my college roommates, as a side story, we put a bowling ball through the wall. We're not doing that to our own homes we live in now. But I mean, so wherever we live, yes, I view that as an expense, right? So that's why I say, even if you buy a 4-unit and you go live in one of the units, okay, well, are you paying your LLC rent? Probably not. You're being wasteful as a human being. You're just being wasteful. You need a place to live and you're living in that unit for free. Great. You're house hacking. It's fine. Right. But if you weren't living there, you'd be able to generate revenue in that place. Right. And then the question is okay, but then where I go next, whether I buy it or rent it, I'm still wasting my money. Exactly. Wherever you're living, it's an expense.
Would that change the value of the property if you were house hacking? If not, or
not really, because it depends who the buyer is. If it's a novice buyer, like for me, I'd say yes, and I would use it against them. Is it always going to work? The better the market is, the less impact it'll have. The worse the market is, probably more of an impact you have. Because the better the market is, you usually have more people playing the game, more buyers willing to buy. And so if you have more buyers willing to buy, there'll be less people that care about that. If you, in our worst market where there's less people willing to buy, now people can make that be a bigger issue. Oh, well, your income says this. I'm buying it off the as-is income day one, right? So it just kind of depends. But yeah, I think, does that make sense though, what I'm trying to say about us being wherever, I just cannot get it through people's head enough. It doesn't matter. When I buy a house, I'm going to buy it through an LLC and I'm going to rent to myself. It's still no matter how you cut it, I get some advantages that way a little bit just because I have a big enough real estate holding where I can rent. I can go live in one of my apartments if I wanted to, right? Whatever. And that place is still gonna get the same tax benefits and whatnot. But wherever you're living, I don't know how, if you own a home, people are like, yeah, well, it's an asset. Well, is it? It's not paying you every single month. And you're sitting on equity that is now not paying you. And they're like, well, yeah, it'll pay me later. You don't know that. And if it does pay you later, what's the amount? Like, yeah, I mean, if you sit on something for 5 years, and if that house goes up 3% per year, when you actually do the math and figure out what you spent on utilities, what you spent on real estate taxes, what you spent on your appliances, and then people are like, well, you have that expense anyways, no matter where you live. And I'm like, exactly. Wherever you live is an expense. So now, can you come out ahead sometimes when you do buy your house and whatever and time it right? Yeah, 1%, 2% of people do. But in reality, I'm like, if you actually took that money and started a business, if you actually took that money and bought a rental and ran it like a business, I guarantee you would be so farther ahead. There's no way, if my first purchase would have been a home, there's no way on earth I'm at where I'm at right now. I'm still renting right now. But there's no way, because I just know if you're banking on the place that you live to be your nest egg, that you're not going to get to a point where you have a ton of absolute freedom in life and be able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. Period.
What benefits purchasing your house under? What would be the point?
I mean, I can rent for myself, and I can have a standard lease that our company has, and then I can still write off all the interest. I can still write off all the real estate taxes. I can still write off, the utility, like certain, common lease, whatever our leases look like at Spaulding Group, I'd still be able to count those as expenses. I'm still having to buy furniture as a human, right? So furniture is not, but like, if we want to do improvements to the property, like it'd be treated like a business, which, buying it. Now, can you necessarily get away with that if that's your only property? I don't know, probably. But if you have a big enough portfolio, like it's so. A lot of different ways to do things. And by the way, yeah, this one? No, we didn't. No. And by the way, like, I'm saying all this stuff, it's my opinion. It doesn't mean I'm right. I'm not trying to battle the thing where, like, I'm right. Like, I might seem that way, but I could care less if you think I'm right or not. I know I'm right. I don't care. I'm not trying to argue with you. If you want to think you're right, that's fine. You do it the way you want to do it. And I'll do it the way I want to do it, and that's fine. And we're both happy that way. What metrics do you look at for an investment is the next question. And then the minimum percent to ink the deal. So I look at a wide variety of metrics. Once again, this goes back to when I answered the financing question earlier. I never in the bank, and when I was talking about the bank, I never just look at one thing or get focused just on one thing. I try to look at the whole big picture. And so I look at price per unit. I look at the cap rate. I look at if there's rent disparity or not. I look at how much deferred maintenance there might be. I look at what's coming up for big capital expenditures. I try to look at the whole picture, right? And then the same thing with the minimum percent to ink the deal. And I think what he means here is, what's your minimum like cash on cash return that you're looking for to want to do a deal? And once again, it depends. Each deal is different, right? So you'd probably think I was crazy right now if I said I'll buy a deal that has 0% return. 0% cash on cash. You're like, dude, you're talking about cash flow all the time. What are you talking about? Because you just focused on the one thing, right? When I just said that, I was also thinking about what the opportunity could be. What I didn't tell you right there, and what you get for not looking at the whole picture, is I'll take 0% cash on cash return. I kicked the camera again. I'll take 0% cash on cash return if I'm at zero and if I'm break even while the property is only 40% occupied, right? So if you have 40 units that are occupied of a 100 unit property, you're 40% occupied. And if you can break even on that deal and the market looks good and you can go rent those other deals, like, why would you not, right? Because now you just go fill those units, right? I mean, that's what we did with the storage unit deal. We essentially were breaking even day one. And so I was like, I'll do this deal, because I knew if you just looked at your cash on cash return, that's all you looked at, you'd be like, I'm not doing this deal. But if you look at the big picture, you see, oh wait, the vacancy is 45%. Hey, now while I'm putting this deal together, I'm going to also negotiate in the deal, right? I don't know if anyone watches Undercover Billionaire, but if you saw what Grant Cardone did the other day with a $10,000 advance, it's freaking amazing. This is like what we did with the storage unit deal. With the storage unit deal, I said, I'll take the 0% return day one when we close. But you know what, Mr. Seller? Let me do this for you. On your behalf, for free, from now until, the 90 days when we close, there'll be a 3-month window. Let me fill up some storage units for you. And if we don't close, you don't have to pay me anything. You just have more storage units that are full. And obviously, what happens if we close on the deal, right? Well, now we have 30 more storage units full. So by the time we actually closed the deal, we had, we filled a 4,000 square foot shop because we were able to market 90 days before close. I put that in the deal. We were able to put the space out there for lease. It was a shop space. And we ended up getting like $1,500 a month for rent there. And the lease started day one when we took over, right? So bang, automatically now my 0% return is up to, that would have taken it, because that whole $1,500 is dropping to the bottom line. I mean, it was a triple net lease essentially. So that $1,500 times 12, 15,000, 3,000, $18,000 to the bottom line. So if I was at 0% on that deal, that would have taken us to because we only put $60,000 cash into that deal. So that would have taken us to like a 33% return, right? So if you're looking at one metric, if you're looking at a minimum percentage to ink a deal, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity is what I'm trying to say. So the more that is left, the more of the pizza that's left to eat, the more you're willing to pay for it and be okay if you don't get the first bite tomorrow. Because you have plenty of bites in the future for you. You like that? I don't know where that came from. I'm hungry for pizza. So try to look at the whole deal. If it's now here's on the other hand. Now let me talk on the other hand. If the deal is full, if the people that are owning it have done a really good job where there's not like a lot of deferred maintenance, there's not a lot of remodel work that you can do because it doesn't justify to do the remodel work because you can't bump rents anymore. If you're buying that deal and it's full, like I said, there's not as much pizza left to eat. You're willing to pay less for that pizza, right? Well, so you're not necessarily willing to pay less for the deal here, but you're not willing to take a less percentage of cash on cash return day one, because you can't, if you say I'm going to take 2% cash on cash day one with this, if I'm going to take 1% cash on cash return for this deal, but I can't add any value, there's no more upside, I can't take that 1% and turn it into 22%, 33%, 6%, 10%, then no, I don't do that deal, right? But I'm not just looking at the cash on cash return percentage, I'm looking at the whole picture, right? I'm probably in that scenario, I'm probably looking at, I want to be, 7, depending on the location, depending on the age, I want to be somewhere between year one, I want to be somewhere between 6 and 12% cash on cash return. So that makes sense?
Yeah.
Sometimes I just feel like no one's actually listening, and I'm mumbling on and people are like, Jesus, this is a waste.
No, well, sometimes I'm reading the comments or looking into something, and you go like, does that make sense?
Oh, so now you're not paying attention.
Not fully.
Dude, this is $100 million education.
I know.
It might be more. Maybe more than 100. What are you looking up?
No, I mean like reading like
selling paint jobs. Ryder's also a sales rep for our painting company, so he's selling paint jobs while he's producing this show. Oh, all right. How much time are we into this?
10, 20. Well, we started late, so
okay. All right.
I mean,
how many live followers we got?
5.
5 live followers. Ava's listening while she's working, hopefully, right? Just kidding, Ava.
Turns it off.
Harry Avery on Instagram says, everybody's listening. We're just surprised it's free. That's what I just told Ryder. This is literally like, it's 100. I'm going to put a value on this. This is $100 billion. This is Elon Musk education here. Just kidding. Not even close, guys. But I'm serious. It's like, it's life-changing for sure. All right.
I think that is the next question.
If you have serious money, like Elon Musk, are you investing in major markets or secondary markets? It depends on what your flavor of the day is. It depends what lollipop you like, right? Like, I know a guy that's in a tertiary market that, I used to own properties in a rough area, and there's a guy, he owns probably 15,000 units. He's in Wisconsin. He owns probably 15,000 units total. He's probably like 55. And I would say 9,000 of those units are in very, 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 very rough locations, and he's crushing it. I mean, and I'm talking like serious money, obviously. So I think as far as like whether it's A, B, C, D market, whether it's a major market, a primary market, secondary, tertiary, whatever, it depends, because if you have serious money, there's people that have serious money doing all of those, doing one of them, doing two of them. So it just depends, and you have to find like what your niche is and what you want to be doing. Some of these deals, Ryder's looking at them, like I can tell you right now, you're probably gonna be knocking on doors, and you might want to bring a gun with you just in case. Like, but it's like, what, hey, what do you want to get into? What do you want to have to deal with? And there's a million ways to play the game. So don't let someone tell you, if you have serious money or looking to make serious money or whatever, you got to be invested in this. There's so many different ways to do it. It just depends on what works for you and what your business model is, and what opportunities you're going after, So next question. This guy or gal just pulled out $1 million on a cash out refi. And his or her question is, spread the money out or go all in on one deal? I mean, if the deal is what's your goal, right? Are you trying to maximize what you can do with that $1 million as far as, so if I were you, if this was me, I would try to do two separate deals with $1 million. I would put 500 into each, but I would go raise another $9.5 million on each deal from other investors. So then we can do two deals. And then my private equity company wins, my $500,000 in each deal wins, and all the investors win. So once again, it's almost it almost depends. Like, what are your options? Now, the other side of the coin is, if I don't have many options, but I have one really good property that I know is like a for sure thing, and it can be crazy returns, then I'll just put all the $1 million in, and go win on that deal. Now, if you're saying, should I spread the money out, like put some into a deal and keep some personally, I can tell you right now, I'm putting the full $1 million to work. Like, when I have cash, it gets to a point where I'm like, I'm immediately putting it to work, so that I have to go to work to get my next dollar in my bank account, because I go to zero, not quite to zero, but I mean, I go close to zero in relative terms when I write these checks and go into the deals. So just kind of depends what your goals are, depends what your options are. But if you find a winner, like, go all in on it. If you're confident in yourself, and if you can, kind of set up a fund structure, and you can take 500 and put it over here, 500 and put it over here, and do two deals, and then have a private equity play in it too, where you're getting upside for performance, that's the way to go. Because when you can get returns to investors, and then based off those returns get compensation for yourself because you're succeeding there, that's always the way to go. But next.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
Red Biden's plan.
I just heard about it.
Well, one of them is raising minimum wage. How would that affect rents?
I don't know. And I mean, what I've always been saying is, with Democrats being in, there's more regulation.
Right.
This counts as regulation. And ultimately it's going to make real estate go up. And so, yeah, if everyone's getting paid minimum wage, I don't know, maybe it makes rents go up, maybe it doesn't. I think either way, rents are going to go up over the long term. Right? Go ask your grandpa what he paid for rent on his first apartment. It's amazing. My grandpa's like, we were driving down Black River Falls, I think it was, and my grandpa's like, see that apartment right there? I used to pay, it was like $62 a month or something. And it was in the, late, 50s or something like that. And that's where he's like, so just keep doing what you're doing. Because long term, they're going to go up, right? But I thought about that too. I mean, $15, like, what does that even do to, I thought about, okay, well, if we're hiring, painters or, whatever, what does that potentially do to the painting business? I'm like, I think it makes all those services go up in price.
Yeah, that's true.
if that's your new base, I don't know. Some of the job, it's crazy to me that they think about raising the minimum wage that way, because a lot of those minimum wage jobs aren't meant for someone that's gone to college, right? Someone that has debt from college, a lot of those minimum wage jobs are to get like high school kids work, right? Younger people, people who don't have opportunity work. It's interesting. And I'm not saying I believe in what should be done one way or another on that topic, because on that topic, I think we'll all adjust and figure it out. But, ultimately, yes, I think if they raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, it doesn't necessarily help that person at minimum wage, because everything else is going to adjust anyways. So that's not the solution to the problem. Right. And I keep battling this with people all the time. The solution to the problem is understand how money works. Right?
You watch Ben Shapiro at all? Get a segment covered.
Is he the younger dude a little bit?
Yeah,
I've seen clips.
Maybe?
Oh, maybe it's not him then.
I don't know. He talked about it.
What did he say? Similar to what I said, or no?
It's just how it poorly affects metropolitan cities. Moves from one thing to the other. Right.
And so nothing's gonna break the chain. Okay, taxes aren't gonna fix it. You can give someone all the money in the world. It's the people that win the lottery for $50 million and are broke in 12 years. Giving people money and that's once again, I'm not for or against. I'm for everyone going out and being successful. But people are looking at it from the wrong light. Some of the things that are being done now are a band-aid that people think are going to work. And I'm like, it's ultimately not fixing the problem. You're just covering up, you're just covering it up. You're putting the dust under the rug. You're not getting the dust out of the house into the garbage.
So they can't see it, but they can hear it.
Of course, one government policy leads to the next. If you raise the minimum wage, then it's going to raise the rents. When it raises the rents, you're going to have to build affordable housing. When you have to build affordable housing, you have to tax people to build the affordable housing. When you tax people to build the affordable housing, people move out of the city, and you have to raise taxes on the people who remain in the city, and this is how you hollow out the economy of a major metropolitan area in the United States.
And I agree with that. It's just a new baseline. It's a new baseline. That's all it is. So it doesn't fix the underlying problem. The underlying problem is people need to understand, which that's why, our guest that was going to come on today, that's why it's cool what he's doing, because he's a, what's the class that he teaches? Financial lit?
Yeah,
literacy. Okay. I'm like, what does lit stand for?
It
Financial literacy teaches and so that's why I think I go and talk in that class sometimes, and that's why I want to have him on, because he understands. Minogue understands from that standpoint. A lot of these things, they're not going to be fixed unless people's education fixed. So now then it's okay, getting the right education, right? Because now if you get once again, if you get a banker in there, they're going to say, hey, save your money. No, you're wrong. It's good for the bank. You need to get your money to work. You can't have your money sitting in a money market forever. You can't have your money sitting in a savings account or a checking account forever. You might as well stick it under your mattress at that point, because what you have to do is get your money to truly work for you, and you have to get assets. You have got to trade your dollars for assets. So everyone's eye and mindset is on the dollar. Let's raise minimum wage. The dollar isn't the problem. You gotta trade the dollars you get for assets. And I agree with what the guy said, Shapiro.
Yeah, okay.
I agree with what Shapiro said on there, because when you raise minimum wage, all that you're just raising the baseline. That's all you're doing. That's not fixing a long-term problem. Will it fix the problem short-term before everything goes up? Yeah. So you're going to be good for, I don't know, is it 6 months? Is it 18 months? Is it 6D months? Maybe it's 5 years, 7 years. But at some point, that dust from under the rug comes back out and circles around your house in the air and goes to the furnace and messes up your furnace filters and whatever. Just get the dust out, right? And getting the dust out in this scenario is getting people financially educated and learning how money works and learning that you got to put your money to work. It's not about I make hardly anything for a salary in relative terms to what I'm worth, because I just start putting money to work when I do get it. I'm not worried about what I'm bringing in tomorrow. I'm not worried about the dollar amount that I'm bringing in a week from now, because I just know over the long term, doing the right thing. Now you got to be able to start somewhere, right? So you got to find a way to make more money, but it's not about the money. You got to be able to then save and stash that money. I don't even want to say save. Let's say stash the money in the bank, and then the guy with the $1 million refinance, find a way to put that full $1 million back to work. So now that your money is paying you while you're still working. right? You're still making like you're still working and getting paid for that time and making your salary. But over time, the cool thing is now your distributions from your investments and your assets, they start to become so big. The money that you're making from your assets from just waking up and walking around Earth is, 5x, 10x, 100x what you're making from your salary. But you got to find what you love and keep doing your salary, because like the moment that I feel like the moment that someone then just sits back and does nothing is when things will crumble, because you're going to get in trouble, or you're going to start making poor decisions or whatever. So you still got, in my opinion, you still got to stay busy and work. But I don't know. I don't know anything. It's just my mindset with it. It's just my opinions.
Did we answer this one?
How do you structure your waterfall pay schedule? No, we didn't. So how we get a sip of water here. How we schedule our waterfall, 6% preferred return is paid first to all the investors. Meaning, if you invest $1 million, you're going to get $60,000 as the preferred return. Right now, that's not guaranteed. Doesn't mean we're going to guarantee. We don't guarantee anything, because the whole thing, you could be out all your money. Right? Everything could crash and burn, and be out all your money. Pay a 6% preferred return. With the cash that's left above and beyond that, it's a 70-30 split. 70% goes back to the investors, pro rata. 30% comes to the general partnership. Once it's a 12% annualized return, so we hit 12% and backfill all those years, it's now a 50-50 return, right? Or 50-50 split between investors and the general partnership group. So that's why I was giving the advice to the guy, hey, if you can start to find other investors who don't, a lot of the investors who work for us, like they just have more money than they know what to do with. They know they got to put it to work. And so if you can find people that need to put money to work, now you're basically going to get paid off your $500,000 that you got in. You're going to get paid that 6% preferred return just like they are. But now for performing and for really cranking and getting them a return, you're going to be able to split those profits with them, right? And so that's why my advice to him is anytime you can do that, that's great. If you're good at this, it's not meant for everybody. And you got to have systems in place. You got to have a team. You can't half-ass it. I'm doing this full time. Like, this is what I'm doing. We're cranking on these properties every day, and we got teams in place and figuring out and solving problems. I mean, there's problems every day. That's why I was late to this. We're figuring out freaking problems, issues, stuff that just sucks to deal with sometimes, right? So next. How do you learn to build a fund? Just reading books. I mean, there's books out there. Like there's if you just Google private equity books, you'll probably find like 50 books come up, and probably like this is my guess, 20 of them are crappy, but 30 of them are really good. And of those 30, there'll be like 35 paragraphs that you'll just at one point you'll read, and like 30 paragraphs you'll be able to look back like, oh, this all makes sense. It'll like unlock your brain. So just by reading and learning. I mean, go read about Blackstone. Go read about KKR. Go read about the Carlyle Group. I think TPG is another one. Go read about those companies. Go read about how Warren Buffett got started. Right? How he got started and made a lot of money was because of the performance that he did on the deals when he had other people's money. Right? So the deal was, which is essentially a fund or a private equity, one sense or another. And essentially what he did was he started invested his own money. He got other people investing as well. But then for hitting certain tiers, he got paid more. And when you do that, it will take a return that would have normally been 20%, and it takes your return to be more like 60% annually. Whatever it might be, because of the performance part. So that's kind of how I just learned by reading. I mean, reading and then sketching things out on paper. Okay, like what would be fair? So I asked myself, what would be fair if I was an investor, making a lot of money? I just needed somewhere to put my money to work. What would for sure beat the banks? What would for sure beat other investment options that are out there? And something that I'd be confident in that I'm not going to lose their money, right? And then I just started jotting out on paper. Okay, well, I know real estate. By this point, I knew real estate, right? I'd done some deals, so I knew about how much cash a deal would throw off. And I'm like, okay, well, if this deal is going to throw off this much cash in years 1 through 10, and then when we sell it, it's going to throw off this much cash. How much of that is fair to give to the investors? And beyond fair, it beats anywhere else that they can put their money, in my opinion. Except unless, let me tell it this way, unless they can put that money in their own business, because they'll make more money there. But if they are making so much money, not necessarily, I guess. And And then what I just started doing, I would say, okay, well, how could you divvy up these how could you divvy up the cash? How could you divvy up the profits after they got those returns? And I'm like, okay, well, once they get a certain return, that's a good return, then the rest of that cash can be a 50-50 split for the performance, right? And for me to get there and to earn that, we have to perform. It's not guaranteed, right? But we got to be able to perform on it. So that's how I did. I mean, I just reading and just knowing my industry and my niche, and then just being creative with it. I didn't model it after one specific thing. It was just a accumulation of things that I read, and then me just creatively looking at and understanding how much money is in our deals when we're in them and done. So
we're at an hour or two.
How many questions do we have left?
One.
Yeah, let's just do this one. You must have missed a couple, or maybe they didn't upload.
No, there was 4 more, but originally, like, I was thinking.
Okay. So those 4 we'll use for.
Yeah.
I think there was like a culture one. I think that'd be good for when he's there too, because that's something. All right. Most important daily things a 17 to 20-year-old should be doing to get into real estate. Daily. Depending on where you're starting, I'm just going to assume this person's starting at absolutely 0. You got to be reading books every single day. Once you find something that you can really relate with or somebody, you should try to find more material that person's writing, because you can't take everyone's advice, right? So I guess I'm not going to deter you from reading certain things, but you got to read. As you start to read books, you got to limit what you actually are going to implement, because if you try to implement everything that you read, you're not going to make because there's going to be people that will contradict what the other person says, right? So you got to be able to sort that stuff out, but you got to be able to read. I mean, like when I was 17 to 20, right? Let's see. Yeah. 17 to 21, 22, like I was reading all the time, and I was reading with the mindset that I was going to go do this at one point. Now, when I was also reading, I was actually going out and looking at deals too. So you should go out and look at deals, find, single family homes, duplexes, 4 units, 8 units, 16 units, 32 units, 64 units, 128 units to go look at, get the numbers on them, and start running through, okay, if I own this building, because this is what I would do. If I own this building, do I really think it would cost that much to cut the grass? Do I really think it would cost that much to plow the snow? Do I really think, like, if the water is this much, why is the water that much? Well, maybe the toilets are from the 1970s. Maybe we should put new low flow toilets in, right? So I tried to, I'd look at it on paper. I'm like, why does some of this stuff cost so much? I'd ask the question. I'd be like, how could I make it cost less? So even before I had the money to do things, I was already going out looking at deals, doing those exercises, so that when it became real time and not a drill, right, I was ready to rock and roll. So that's what you've got to be doing. You've got to be surrounding yourself with other people who are lifting you up and encouraging you, not pulling you down and discouraging you. If there's seminars that you can get to, if there's online webinars you can get to, like, do it. Get on them. Now, once again, going out and doing the things that you learn is ultimately going to be most important. So those shouldn't be the only things that you're doing. When you're 17 and 20 years old, while you're also learning and doing what I just said right there, find a way to start making money. What did you, Ryder, you made money when you were like 17, right? 14. Ryder, can they hear you through any mic?
Yeah, they can hear me.
Okay. So
30 grand through social media.
You made 30 grand through social media at 14 throughout high school. So find a way while you're learning to make money. Ryder throughout high school made 30 grand on Twitch or something, right? Playing video games. Damn. If Tom Slayton's watching right now or Jake McCarty, like if we could have got paid to play video games, I would have stopped showing up to high school.
There's more to it. There's a whole hour.
I know there's more to it, but I mean, I like,
right,
because you promote products, right? You promote other people and stuff, and
yeah,
still, you're playing video games. You're attracting attention through playing video games.
It's a booming industry.
I know it is. I read about it. So if you're 17 and 20 years old, that's what I'd be doing. Find a way to make money, whether it's flipping stuff. If you're good at video games and good at promoting and branding and all that stuff, you can make money on Twitch or whatever. Find a way to make money, and don't go spend it on stupid, dumb stuff. Just stash it. Stash it and keep learning and keep stashing and keep learning and keep stashing and keep learning, and be frugal and don't raise your expenses and keep stashing and keep learning, right? And all of a sudden you're going to be 25 years old, you're going to have $150,000, and now you can go all in on a deal, and it's the right deal, and you know what you're looking for, you know what you're going to be doing from a theoretical standpoint, because I say theoretical standpoint because you read it. But then once you can actually start practicing it, that's when you really learn the most. You learn 10, 100x more than just from reading. But the cool thing about reading is you can avoid mistakes other people. I definitely avoided a lot of mistakes that other people made that I probably would have made if I didn't. Now the thing is even though I read so much, I still make mistakes. I mean, I still make mistakes all the time. And we got a property that's like, we're freaking having to put so much money in that property right now. And I'm like, Jesus. But I'm doing the math on it. I'm like 72% occupied. I'm like, if we just stopped, doing the remodels right now, we'd cash flow positively big time. It's like, God, I just want to get that one done with. So you still run into mistakes, right? But I'm learning. Like, I'm still learning so much. I learn through every deal we do. It's like I learn 10x more than what I already knew. This deal that we're working on right now and closing on Tuesday, I've learned so much from it. So, is that the last question?
Yeah,
You said one more. That was the last question. We got any more questions on Instagram or on YouTube? How many YouTube people we got watching right now? 5. Cool.
6.
Hey, solid. We've had a solid 6 people watch live. 6 to 10 people watch live each of the 4 shows. This is the 4th show, right? 4th show. All right. Well, it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening or watching.
Wednesday.
Yep. Wednesday next week, 6:30 p.m. Central is the plan. We'll announce it. We kind of fly by the seat of our pants a little bit. We'll announce it next week, but we'll have a guest next week. We'll be in here. So it'll be cool to have some give and take with Ryder and I and Nick Minogue. That's the plan. Hopefully we can make it happen. But thank you guys so much for joining. If you're watching on YouTube, listening on YouTube, whatever, it would mean the world if you could just subscribe. If there's anybody that you think would get value out of this, I don't want you to share this with people that you don't think would get value out of it, because I know there's a lot of people out there that think I'm stupid and whatever. That's fine. If they think I'm gonna be stupid, don't share it with them. I'm not just asking you to share with anybody. But if you think there's someone that you care about, if you think that they would care about this or get a lot from it, please share it with them, whether it's tagging me on Instagram or sharing the YouTube page, whatever you can do, get the word out. And feel free to start shooting in questions that you have, whether you're watching on Instagram right now, listening on YouTube, or watching live on YouTube. Feel free to shoot questions out right now for our next show, because even though we have a guest next Wednesday night, we still will be taking questions as my guest. So that being said, guys, happy Friday. Go Pack Go. We'll talk to you soon. Episode 4. Peace.